Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's virtual conference entitled The Impact of Incarceration on Communities, Families, and Children, hosted by the NAACP Education Committee, Wilson, North Carolina. My name is Adrian Dixon, Community Partner and Branch Manager of Self-Help Credit Union in Wilson. I would like to ask for all of our elected officials, clergy, and our program directors to please acknowledge yourself by naming yourself in the chat below. First, I would like to also encourage you all to enhance your viewing experience. Please put your camera or your Zoom on speaker's view. Let's go over a few items so you'll know how to participate in tonight's conference. During this event, questions may be typed in the chat box. A host will read all the questions, and a response will be provided. All questions will be answered at the end to avoid to wait, for your time for a response. I apologize.
Tell her I'm on my way.
All questions will be answered at the end to avoid a wait for time. Do not forget to unmute when you need to speak. Throughout tonight's presentation, we will be showing data slides around the impact of incarceration. Once again, welcome.
My name is Bobby Tyson. I'm representing Pastor Jasper Kent for prayer. And let's all bow our head in a moment of prayer, please. Oh, Father, we come as humble as we know how to thank you for this day. Thank you for our life. Thank you for our health and our strength. Father, we thank you for this event that you have allowed us to do on today. It'll be beneficial for everyone that's online, and the ones on the phone, the ones that's on Zoom. We ask, Father, that you continue to bless this organization day by day. Bless us as we grow stronger and as we help the community throughout any event, any way that we can. And we want to thank you in the name of the Father, in the name of the Son, in the name of the Holy Spirit. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Catherine Leak. I'm part of the Education Committee with the Wilson Area NAACP. Please join me by reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to tell everyone thank you for joining us for this wonderful event. We would like to recognize all our special guests. So if you could please type your name into the chat for those who are ministers of the Gospels, elected officials, and those who are school personnel. Thank you for your service.
Good evening. Right now we have a data slide, and you will see those periodically throughout the presentations today. The one that you're looking at now, as we talk about the importance of incarceration and how we can help, this slide shows how many North Carolina residents are locked up and where. Right now we have 36,000 people in state prisons. There's 19,000 in local jails. 11,000 in federal prisons. We have 470 youth and 210 involuntary commitments, which are people that have been assigned by a judge to a mental health facility of some type. Thank you. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about the overview of this particular event. I'm Carol White, the NAACP Education Chair. For almost a year, our team, meaning Emancipate NC, NAACP of Wilson, and the Community Alliance for Public Education, has worked together to bring new ideas about decarceration to Wilson County in North Carolina. We tied the issue of over-criminalization of Black and Latino individuals to issues of poverty, childhood trauma, and family welfare and stability. We had 3 mass forums for the community at the community college, reaching hundreds of our residents with our message during our first grant. We brought bilingual education materials into the schools regarding the traumatic effect of parental incarceration on children, and developed a cooperative relationship with multiple community partners, many of which we see here tonight, including the Sheriff and Chief of Police in Wilson, North Carolina. Over the next year, we plan to expand into adjoining Nash and Edgecombe counties, both of which
don't have a password. They actually telling you, I told Dennis what to do. When you put the ID number,
Elizabeth,
they ask for passwords.
Please mute. Please mute. If you're not speaking, please mute.
Ms. Joyner, I think that's Ms.
After you
Joyner.
do the ID number and press pound, do you do that?
Please mute. If you're not speaking, please mute. Carol, you need to unmute.
So over the next year, we plan to move into Nash and Edgecombe counties. They have the same DA as Wilson County. Tonight, we present the first in a series of community forums that will address the issues of bail as a price on our people's freedom, discuss advocacy for resentencings and release of individuals serving active sentences in state prisons, even at the risk of COVID-19. Inform the community of the economic impact of incarceration, not only on the community as a whole, but on families and children as well. Children that suffer in silence for shame or because of bullying. Children that are displaced, that are food insufficient, homeless, or too distracted from anxiety and the lack of daily needs to be concerned about learning. Thanks to this second grant from the Vera Institute, we will begin tonight informing you with powerful data and partnership programs such as ORC, the Justice League, Reentry, and the Resilience programs, just to name a few. You will hear a testimonial of what life is like for a returning citizen. We provided a COVID update by our sheriff here in Wilson County, Sheriff Woodard, and a site and release update from the Office of the Chief of Police. So much good information. So let's get started, and thank you for joining us.
All right. Hello, my name is Erika Wilson, and I am a professor and lawyer with the UNC Critical Race Lawyering Clinic. And I have with me here tonight 2 really fabulous students, Manirmal and Sarah, who are going to talk to you about North Carolina's new Second Chance Act and about expungement. So I'll turn it over to them, and they're going to tell you a little bit more about these things.
Hi, everyone. Like Professor Wilson mentioned, my name is Manirmal, and I'm here with my classmate Sarah, and we're going to talk a bit about expungements. And so we're going to try to hit on 3 main points. The first is what expungement is generally. The second is what the Second Chance Law is and what it does. And the third is certificates of relief. If we could go to the next slide, please. Are we able to go to the next slide? Okay, If not, that's okay. I can go ahead and just talk about expungements. So expungement is essentially a court proceeding that results in the destruction of a public criminal record. So throughout this presentation, we're going to use the example of a hypothetical person named Maya. So say Maya was charged with shoplifting, and that charge was eventually dismissed. She still now has that on her public record. There we go. And so expungement is important because people like Maya with criminal records often face penalties and disqualifications in areas like employment, housing, and education, and these are called collateral consequences. So for example, say that Maya, after she's been charged and her charge has been dismissed, she wants to find a job, but job applications are requiring her to disclose that she has a criminal record. That can present difficulties for finding employment. That's just one example of the several different kinds of collateral consequences that exist. And at the end of this presentation, we have a link to a database of all the collateral consequences in North Carolina. And so expungement is important in part because it can help reduce or eliminate these collateral consequences. Next slide, please. It's also important to note that Black North Carolinians are especially likely to face collateral consequences. As of 2018, Black North Carolinians were arrested 2.3 times more frequently than white North Carolinians. Black North Carolinians are also more likely to be stopped while driving, to be searched when stopped, and to be arrested. And so expungements, the Second Chance Act, and certificates of relief, which we'll talk about a bit later, can help address the collateral consequences of this racial inequity. Next slide, please. So say that Maya decides that she wants to go through this expungement process to help reduce the collateral consequences that she's facing. The first thing that she's going to do is to file an expungement petition with the court in the county where she was charged. This petition is essentially just a form where she is requesting expungement of her charge. And depending on the rules in that jurisdiction, there may or may not be a hearing in that court. And if Maya is found to be eligible for expungement, she will be granted expungement and sent an order of expungement. And notice will also be sent to certain North Carolina agencies and other private entities that run background checks. And her public record will be destroyed, and she'll now be able to lawfully say on those job applications that she was not charged with a crime. And a note on eligibility that essentially refers to the fact that certain kinds of charges and convictions can be expunged, but others can't. And so to determine whether or not you have charges or convictions on your record that can be expunged, you can consult with an attorney or refer to the resources that we've listed at the end of this presentation. Next slide, please. And I'll turn it over to my classmate, Sarah.
Thank you, Manermal. So the second component of our presentation is the Second Chance Act. So this law was passed and signed into law this past summer. And it basically expands the eligibility for expungements and also speeds up the process a little bit. So one of the highlights is that after December 2021, certain dismissals and acquittals will be automatically expunged. So say Maya is charged with shoplifting in January 2022 and that charge is dismissed. She won't have to go through the process of applying for an expungement. It'll just be automatic. Next slide, please. A second highlight is that dismissals, now there's no waiting period between the time a charge is dismissed and when you are eligible for an expungement. And there's also no limits on the number of expungements or disqualification based on prior convictions. The process is also a little bit faster. So say Maya has, that's okay. So say Maya has 40 convictions, or excuse me, 40 charges of shoplifting on her record from the past 15 years. Every single one of those charges should be eligible for expungement. Next slide, please. And so another highlight is that it aims to fill the gap left by the Raise the Age legislation in North Carolina that was passed a few years ago. And so Raise the Age targeted people who are 16 to 18-year-olds and tried to have them be charged as juveniles instead of adults. And one benefit of this is that juvenile records are shielded from public view. And so say Maya, she is 16 years old, she's charged now in 2020 with and convicted of shoplifting. that record as a juvenile is going to be shielded in public view. But if Maya was 16 and convicted back in 2015, she's not covered by Raise the Age, and so that record is still public. So for people like Maya in this situation, most of those convictions are now going to be mandatory expungements to kind of even the playing field and fill in this gap. Next slide, please. And the last highlight is that the Second Chance Act expands eligibility for expungements of convictions for older nonviolent felonies and misdemeanors. And so this isn't just for dismissals, this means convictions. And so there are certain time periods where you have to wait between the time of a conviction and when you're eligible to file for expungement, but this does expand eligibility. And next slide, please. Thank you. And so lastly, the certificate of relief. So this is not an expungement or a pardon, but it can still grant relief from certain collateral consequences. So for example, if Maya was convicted of armed robbery, that charge is not likely to be eligible for expungement under the Second Chance Act, but she could still apply for a certificate of relief. And if granted by the court, then she could still now have access to more jobs that she didn't before, which she would have been mandatorily excluded from based on her conviction. So it's not exactly like expungement, but when expungement is not an option, it can still be a path to relief. And next slide, please. So these are some resources we've collected if you want to learn more about the Second Chance Act and also try to evaluate your own eligibility. And then our next slide is just our question slide, but I know that somebody said I think we might do questions at the end of the presentation, so whatever works.
Thank you, Sarah Manermal. This is Professor Erika Wilson again. And so I would just add, if anyone has questions or knows someone who needs an expungement, we are working with the NAACP to help some people get expungements. Feel free to reach out to my clinic. I'm going to leave my clinic telephone number and email address in the chat. So if you know someone who could benefit from an expungement, please feel free to have them reach out to us.
The next data slide that you see before you looks at pretrial populations, and it shows the disparities between your minorities, like between blacks and whites, over the last 15-year period. So if you look to the left, what you see is racial disproportionality in pretrial detention in 2002. And on the left, you see the total US population by Black, Hispanic, white, and other. On the right, you see the pretrial jail population, Black, Hispanic, white, and other. As you can see, the pretrial is much higher for those that are African American. On the right side, the graph with the dot shows the difference in the pretrial jail population from 2002 to 2017. There has been an increase from 182,754 to over 480,000 in a 15-year period. And that is mass incarceration. Thank you.
Hey, I'm Yulonda Taylor. I'm the Managing Attorney of Legal Aid of North Carolina here in Wilson. And I thank Dr. White for changing the schedule around a little bit because I have a conflict in my schedule tonight. And I guess what I want to talk about briefly in my 5 minutes is the economic impact of mass incarceration. I want to start with a quote from The New Jim Crow, which many of us may have read, by Michelle Alexander. It states that the slave went free, stood a brief moment in the sun, then moved back again towards slavery. And that was a quote from W.B. Du Bois' Black Reconstruction in America that's been reincorporated in The New Jim Crow. And in reading that book, it is a must read, and in reading that book, And piggybacking off of what Attorney Wilson and Attorney Jawa, sorry if I mispronounced your name, I'm sorry, stated in their presentation regarding expunctions. Legal aid, we also do expunction cases, and we do see how the majority of our clients, if we had to break it down along racial lines, the majority of our clients are African American people who have had past interactions with the judicial system and are now prevented from obtaining a job or from obtaining housing. And of course, you can only imagine how those barriers, those social barriers, can also affect their ability to care for their children, you know? So we were talking about the trickle-down effects, and it is a trickle-down effect. It's not just keeping a person in jail when they can't afford bond, but as a result of that, they can lose their job, and it also affects their children in school, especially if they become transient. And I know I'm preaching to the choir because all of you guys are community workers, you're in the community, and you do this work. But not being able to afford your bail not only dictates whether or not you can walk away, but again, these long-term consequences that we're seeing embedded in the structure of the family, you know, are long-lasting. Let's see here. So it's like the outcomes become this longer conviction or this longer sentence that a person has to live with because of this interaction with the jail, and because they probably lost their job. And if they weren't poor before, you know, mass incarceration definitely leads to poverty. And that's what we do at Legal Aid. That's what we do well. We address poverty through the access of justice with our legal work. I know, and I don't know, maybe some of your other presenters can speak more about this. We mainly do civil work at Legal Aid. We only do expunctions. That's the only area that sort of touches on criminal law. But it was my understanding that in 2016, Chief Justice Martin had recommended reforming the bail system. It's my understanding that these changes have unfolded slowly. So I do not know, you know, what the process is on that right now. But the root causes of mass incarceration are poverty and over criminalization. And the majority of the clients that we deal with are single family households, or, you know, a mom is usually our client, and a mom with children is usually our client. We rarely see intact nuclear families, you know, as clients. So, and a lot of our clients, you know, live in subsidized housing with the Wilson Public Housing Authority, or have a Section 8 voucher, or if they're not using subsidized housing, they can only afford very low rent. So, so incarceration and not having a parent, you know, in the home, we see how this can be a disruptive thing in a client's ability to move from economic stability to economic mobility. So again, I think it's difficult, and I see some of my reentry friends up here, Mr. Hinton. I know it's very difficult to ascertain whether or not poverty makes someone more likely to commit a crime, but I think there's data out there that shows that, you know, that being charged with a crime usually leads to poverty, as stated. And I have some statistics that I'm going to just read off quickly. It states that adults in poverty are 3 times more likely to be arrested than those who are not. And people earning less than 150% of the federal poverty level are 15 times more likely to be charged with a felony, which by definition carries a longer sentence, as we know, than those people earning above that threshold. So there's this real deep connection between criminalization and living in poverty that we have to look at. And the Brookings Institute found that only 49% of incarcerated men were employed in the 3 years prior to incarceration, and their median annual earnings were around $6,250. Just 13% earned more than $15,000. So their study also revealed this pattern that these individuals are not just more likely to be poor and unemployed, but they were also more likely to grow up in poverty and in neighborhoods with high unemployment. So I guess as a community, if we were convening for the purpose of addressing mass incarceration or over criminalization of certain segments of the population, we have to also address poverty and unemployment. And as a legal attorney, I wanted to lift that up. Legal aid attorney, I wanted to lift that up in this discussion. And I hate that I can't stay around for additional thoughts on this topic, but I hope I made that connection that we have to address poverty while we're addressing this mass incarceration issue. Thank you, Dr. White.
Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone. My name is Attorney Dawn Blagrove. I am the Executive Director of Emancipate NC and a partner with the Wilson NAACP in Cape in the VERA grant that is funding our event this evening. So thank you so much for having us. I'm just going to talk a little bit about some of the demographics in Wilson, Nash, and Edgecombe counties, which are the counties that our grant have been extended to. So with that, we'll get started in just a second. There we go. All right, so let's start with Wilson County. For those of you that live in Wilson County is a rural county, you know that, and it is east of Raleigh, North Carolina, has a population of about 81,000 people, has a poverty rate that is over 20%, and has a Black and Latinx residents are incarcerated at a rate of 847 per 100,000. The chart on the slide is a chart that shows you just over time the incarceration rates, or the jail rates rather, the jail population rates, and it's broken down by race. So you can see here that except for a short time in 1985, between 85 and 2000, African Americans or Black folks in Wilson County have made up consistently the largest portion of the jail population. And I think that speaks directly to the poverty rate that is over 20%, and speaks directly to what Attorney Yulonda just talked about as it relates to the nexus between poverty and being justice involved. Next slide. Next, we have Edgecombe County. Edgecombe County is also a rural North Carolina county. Its county seat is Tarboro. The population is 56,552, according to the 2010 census. I hope everyone has completed the census. If you haven't, you still have a little bit of time because the deadline has been extended. So if you have not completed the census, please do. It is important to all of the work that we do as far as community organizing and as far as making sure that there are proper funding for all of the things that we are talking about today, the social needs of the communities, including making sure that there's enough money to make sure that our children are properly taken care of, that folks can afford to be primary caretakers, especially if and when that person becomes justice involved. We want to make sure that everyone is completing their census so that we can make sure that our communities have access to all the federal funding that we need and that we are entitled to. So Edgecombe County is a rural county in North Carolina. County seat is Tarboro. Population right now is 56,552. Again, it also has a poverty rate that is over 20%. And Black and Latinx residents are incarcerated at a much higher rate than their white counterparts. And we can look here at the chart that gives you, again, decades-long view of the population rates in Edgecombe County. And except for that weird dip, and I suspect that that was something around sometime after 2010, it looks like there was some weird anomaly with the data collection. But otherwise, what we can see is that African Americans far and above make up the vast population, the vast majority of the population of people who are jailed in Edgecombe County, and have for an extended period of time. What we're hoping is that as we work with Nash, Edgecombe, and Wilson counties, that we can help figure out some ways and some alternatives to bringing those numbers down, making them look a little bit more equitable, and creating a justice system that is fair and treats everyone the same. Last slide. Lastly, we will look at Nash County. Nash County is also a rural county in North Carolina. It was formed in 1777 out of Edgecombe County, excuse me. Population is 95,840, and it has a poverty rate of roughly 14%. But again, the Black and Latinx population are overly incarcerated as it relates to, or are overly involved with the criminal justice system as it relates to spending time in jail. Again, you can see that the graph here shows that there's an overwhelming disproportionate rate of Black and brown people who are, or actually Black people who are disproportionately spending time inside of the jails in Nash County. So what we hope to do through the work in this project and through partnership with people like you all in the community who care about these issues is to help create some equity in these graphs, and to show and create that, and to create criminal justice systems that help people avoid going into jails, help people avoid the trap of the criminalization of poverty, and create a more fair and equitable system for everyone. Thank you for your time.
Mr. Lyles, are you available? You may have to unmute if you are. Elizabeth, maybe we need to move forward and come back. The re-entry is a commercial.
And I'm the program coordinator for New Ranger Services. Our program is designed to assist individuals that have been justice involved with barriers and challenges such as transportation, housing, childcare, education and training programs, substance abuse issues, as well as mental health issues. By doing so, we have created a reentry council. Our reentry council consists of our community partners to assist us with these barriers and challenges. Our ultimate goal is to ensure that every individual that we come in contact with are productive, and to also provide a safe community for our area. Thank you.
I guess it's on me. I see my name. My name is Kristie Puckett-Williams, everybody, and I work with the ACLU of North Carolina as the statewide campaign for Smart Justice Manager, and we're partnering with Emancipate NC to create the Justice League. And so the Justice League is a group of formerly incarcerated people from across the state of North Carolina who will be working to influence the legislative agenda that will meet the needs of Black, brown, and poor folks and working class folks here in North Carolina. And so it will be led by myself, Dawn, and Kerwin Pittman, who will be working to, right now, we're training folks on organizing and getting a deep understanding of the political system in this country. We're also helping them to understand this system through a non-reformist abolitionist perspective, so that what they are pushing for legislatively will not be recreating another system, prison by another name. We have seen through COVID the expansion of digital prisons and prisons in our communities through the use of electronic monitoring and algorithms. And so we don't want to recreate a second class citizenship, which we already have, as you heard from the Second Chance Act that we worked so hard to get over the finish line for the last 2-3 years, y'all. I got my pen from Roy Cooper though when he signed it, but it's still not worth a thing, right? If the people who are coming home, if the people who are already home don't have anything to look forward to. So the Transformative Justice League looks to do certain things. We look to, number one, educate the community about what the conditions of incarceration are. What is violence? You know, we always talk about a crime, but we never talk about poverty being a crime, poverty being violent, not knowing how you're gonna pay your bills or how you're gonna pay your rent, or if you're gonna have access to health care. That is violent. And so we are reframing the narrative about violence in our community. The police are violent. Poverty is violent. The system of white supremacy and anti-Blackness is violent. The individual violence that we see in our streets is a direct result of the white supremacy that exists in all of our systems, but especially our criminal legal system. And so we are working to dismantle the white supremacy that we know exists, the anti-Blackness that we know exists, and reframe the narrative about what is the value of people who have been through a system. Who is the experts? The people who've studied in law schools, the law, or the people who sat in the cage for years experiencing the effects and the impact of those laws. So we're really reframing the narrative about the value of people who have been incarcerated. I myself am what the state of North Carolina considers to be a habitual felon. If you read my record, you would think that I was someone who would never get out of the jails or the prisons. But today I lead people across this state to stand in their power, to use their voice, to wield their power in a way that bends the arc of justice towards Black folks, towards poor folks, towards disenfranchised and marginalized communities. And so we'll be continuing to work with Dawn and Emancipate NC, the NAACP across the state, as the ACLU of North Carolina, to continue to center the needs of the people, to continue to reframe the narrative about who deserves what. You know, when people have been incarcerated, for some reason we believe like that gives us license to treat them any kind of way. And we're here to say no more. Just because we have made mistakes, just because we have acted in ways that told about the poverty that we existed up under, just because our substance use and mental health disorders have been criminalized against us, we are not what we have been charged with. We are much more than that. And so that is what the Transformative Justice League will be doing. I call it the Transformative Justice League because we're transforming justice, but it officially is the Justice League. That's what we will be working on. We look for your support. I look forward. Y'all gonna see a lot of me. Y'all, where grandma at? Y'all see Miss Phyllis Hardy out there? That's my grandma. I'm also a member of the National Council for Incarcerated and Formerly Incarcerated Women and Girls, and we will be coming to the eastern part of the state to further and support the work that y'all have already been doing. We do not want to come in and take over anybody's hard work, but we definitely want to uplift, support, and advance the work that you all have been working on for a long time. Thank y'all so much for giving me my little 3 minutes of y'all's time. Again, Kristie Puckett-Williams with the ACLU of North Carolina. If you need to get with me, it's kwilliams@aclunc.org. I travel. COVID ain't got me pinned down. I come across the state. I don't got no problem. I live in Charlotte, but I will hit the mountains. You'll see me one day in Asheville, and 2 days later, I'll be out in Pasquotank. So don't worry about it. If you invite me, I'll come. I love to throw down. I love to get in good trouble, bad trouble, all the trouble. It don't matter to me because it's gonna take all of that to get our people free.
My name is Marvin Dew. I'm a program manager for the OIC of Wilson. The OIC of Wilson provides 7 services that help people help themselves. The ITTS Health Services provides free condoms, free needle exchanges, and free STD testing. The The WRA program targets ages 16 to 24 and assisting them in the career pathway of their choice. SOAR 4A is a reentry program that targets ages 25 and up in 5 different counties. We assist them in the transition from prison and productive citizens in our community, as well as the proper role in the family structure. Myself, being an ex-offender, came home, shot 8 times, almost losing my life. Still being judged by what I was convicted of, could not find stable employment, and could not figure out my role in my children's lives. OIC helped me figure that role out and gave me a career and opportunity to help those that were once where I was. If you have any questions about this, our number is 252-291-0038, or you can reach me by my email, mdu@oicwilson.org. Thank you.
Okay, I see that my picture's up there now. So we've talked a lot about today about the statistics of individuals incarcerated. So I don't want to go over that, but I do want to talk to you about the fact that we probably have about 2.5 million or over 2 million children that are affected by parents who are in the justice system in North Carolina. That increases our tax base because a lot of those individuals are going to have supplemental support, such as food stamps. Sometimes there's a high percentage of individuals who are diagnosed with disabilities within that population, and a lot of them are individual children who are trying to pursue a better life, but don't have the intimate advice of a parent or the supervision of a parent. North Carolina currently has incarcerated right now, as of 2019, December 2019, they have about 30,000 individuals incarcerated. And we're paying over $1 billion a year in North Carolina to keep those individuals locked up. And that number fluctuates has been as high as 37,000 people incarcerated. There's been a concerted effort since 2010 to reduce that population. But children are the voiceless. Those are the individuals that no one sees, no one hears from. Those are the individuals who are struggling in school, struggling in society, unable to have the social graces trained at home, so that they can enter into society and get a proper job. These are the young people. I just wanted to share with you that North Carolina is one of the only states that has a statewide reentry program focused on dealing with certain issues such as housing and education. And we are touching bases with mental health and all these other places. Other states have reentry programs, but it's not a statewide initiative. So we're being looked at as a state and seeing whether or not whether they can adopt the program that we've used to help our returning citizens and their families. I don't want to go any further in statistical things, but you have to understand that this mission is really both fiscal and moral. Last year, the United States spent $80 billion to incarcerate citizens of the United States. We have the highest per capita, and I'm sure you've heard this time and time again, of incarcerated citizens in the world. But we're trying hard, both legislatively and community-based wise, mental health wise. We're trying to reduce and change those trends. Our children are now suffering. Now, I want to share a personal story with you before I close out. My son, who's now in college, used to play AAU basketball. And on that team, he had about 12 to 15 young men who were playing. And because of my flexibility in my schedule, I was the assistant coach of this basketball team. And I would travel all over the state and sometimes cross state lines to help these young men and assist these young men while they play basketball. But I had a conversation with these children, and they were arguing with me that all African-American men will spend time in prison. It is inevitable, that there is nobody who is going to avoid that consequence. Not college, not trade school, but prison. They anticipate it. This is Wilson, North Carolina, and I can't help but believe that that attitude is nationwide. And because of the lack of parenting, when we would go and travel all over, many times I was the only parent of a student athlete that was in attendance of a game, even games that were played in Wilson. So I implore you to understand that their voice has to be heard. Schools, teachers are trying their best to educate our children, but they need parental backup. And it's so shocking for them to have parents who are attentive with their children. So when you think about that, you have over 2 million students who are affected directly by having a parent or both parents in the system. We have to figure out a way to reduce this population and get our fathers and mothers back in the communities to supervise our children, to protect our children, and to guide our children. So thank you for the opportunity to share this with you. And I hope that those of you that are here understand that Nash, Edgecombe, and Wilson have a thriving reentry population and council, and they need your constant participation and voices. So I would recommend that you find out who your chairperson of your local reentry council is and offer them your physical presence and your personal and professional influence to solve this problem. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Emika Barber, and I am one of the Child Welfare Supervisors here at CPS at Wilson County DSS. Wilson County DSS is very proud to be a trauma-informed agency. We began our work with trauma in 2011 with a grant that focused on the stability of kids in foster care placement. We quickly learned that we needed to complete trauma screenings on all children who were in the child welfare system. We now have the ability to screen, refer for assessment, and provide trauma-informed interventions when needed. We have an in-house clinical team to support our trauma-informed work, and we are one of the few county departments that complete trauma screenings. We also provide a trauma-informed resource parenting curriculum. We are now partnering with Wilson County Schools, and we will be training all staff at Darden Middle School in a trauma-informed approach, as well as building resilience. We also will complete biobehavioral feedback with students and teach them how to reconnect and build resilience within themselves. We have definitely seen the benefits of our trauma-informed work here at the agency. We recognize the importance of dealing with trauma, even in the adults and the caretakers and the families that we're working with. We understand the importance of how trauma affects how we live and function in our day-to-day lives. And we especially understand how it affects our ability to parent and care for our loved ones. Wilson County DSS would like to say thank you to all of our community partners who are invested in building a trauma-informed community, and thank you to the NAACP for this learning opportunity and for allowing us to play a small part in it. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Attorney Tattionia Miles. I'm an attorney with North Carolina Prisoner Legal Services. I also partner with Emancipate NC, CAPE, and the NAACP of Wilson County to analyze the impact of incarceration on families and our communities. Today, I will be discussing how incarceration has impacted children and their academic success. Next slide, please. First, I'm going to just start off with a basic explanation or definition of jail versus prison. Jails, the definition may vary by state, but jails usually fall under local jurisdiction. Jails confine individuals who are awaiting trial or sentencing or who have already been sentenced, and their sentences are shorter than 1 year, usually for misdemeanors. Whereas prison usually is under state or federal facilities for individuals who have committed felonies or whose sentences are for longer than a year. Regardless of whether a person is incarcerated in jail or prison, it's a traumatic event for a child. Children with an incarcerated parent face a wide range of childhood trauma that can impact their education. The trauma can be related to their parents' arrest or the experiences that led to the arrest. So it could be if they've seen violence in the home or in their communities that can impact them. Next slide, please. So how does incarceration impact the child's education? Research has frequently found an association between children's low educational attainment and parental incarceration. However, the findings to date are confounded, meaning that it's very difficult to distinguish risk factors and with outcomes because each child's situation is unique. However, there is a lot of data out there that shows that incarceration does impact a child's education. So today, being arrested, imprisoned, or on probation has serious impacts on not only that individual, but also their families. A 2015 study showed that 1 in 9 Black children had a parent in jail or prison, which was about twice as high as their white counterparts. And children are the most vulnerable when a parent is incarcerated. Some children may begin to have negative views of authority, especially police, as a result of a parent's incarceration. And that can go back to if they saw their parent be arrested or had violence in the home, that can impact how they view authority. One study has shown that 67% of arrested parents were handcuffed in front of their children. Next slide, please. In 2016, a report was done by the Economic Policy Institute. Researchers found that children of incarcerated parents are more likely to drop out of school, develop learning disabilities, including ADHD, misbehave in school, and suffer from migraines, asthma, high cholesterol, depression, anxiety, post-traumatic stress disorder, and homelessness. Each of these conditions challenges a student's academic performance. And I believe Dawn in the chat said that incarceration is a social and health epidemic. Elementary school children with incarcerated fathers were more likely to experience grade retention than their peers who did not have an incarcerated parent. In contrast, 49% of children aged 9 through 14 with an incarcerated mother experienced behavioral issues that led to suspension. 45% expressed little to no interest in school when the parent that was incarcerated was their mother. In examining school performance among 13 to 20-year-olds, when the mother is incarcerated, these kids were more disinterested in school, likely to be suspended or fail a class. Next slide, please. So here are some common identifiers, things to look out for when a child's parent is incarcerated. If they begin to act out, if they begin to sleep in class, their grades start to drop, they start to resist authority, you see them exhibiting low self-esteem, depression, you suspect that they are using drugs or have suicidal tendencies. Next slide, please. So I wanted to talk a little bit about how certain individuals can help. For teachers, you should be aware of stereotypes, your own subconscious assumptions. Subconscious assumptions can affect the child's ability to learn. Be sensitive to emotional triggers. Understand whether your student knows why their parent is incarcerated before you speak with them. Collaborate with their parent or the caregiver. Assist the child with achieving educational outcomes by identifying areas of vulnerability, and advocate and educate colleagues regarding stigmas they may have. Next slide, please. For counselors, it's important to look at conflict resolution, connect with community resources, help the student learn how to cope with having an incarcerated parent and manage feelings and learn how to problem solve. Next slide, please. And for school administrators, it's important to change your personal attitude. How your attitude is can trickle down to how your staff thinks and feels and how they help students. Collaborate with community resources and begin collecting data and commit to quality, consistency, and stated goals. Next slide, please. And so this is the end of my presentation. I wanted to end it with a quote that says, "What defines us is how well we rise after falling." Thank you for having me.
Sheriff Woodard, are you with us today? All right, let's maybe move forward. Captain Borkin, are you with us today?
Yes, ma'am, I'm here.
Okay.
I'll talk a little bit about cite and release and from the Wilson Police Department standpoint. Cite and release means basically when an officer issues a citation instead of taking a person to jail. There are numerous factors that deal with cite and release. Deals with the nature of the crime. If the individual has ID on him or her, because it's so easy for someone else to use someone's identification during this day and time. So we have to make sure that, and the past criminal history. When you cite and release, also, when I talk about the nature of the crime, there are different classes of crimes that deal with felony, misdemeanors, and infractions. Most infractions are issued on citations. Some misdemeanors can be written on citations, and that means you can write the citation and cut the individual loose. And felonies, you do not have the right to or the discretion to write a citation for that. Most felonies have to be, individual has to be taken to jail. That's basically a view of what cite and release means coming from the Wilson Police Department.
Captain Borkin, can you hear me okay?
Yes, ma'am. Can you hear me?
Yes. The chief last year did a great job of redefining and looking at the cite and release policies for Wilson County. Do you have any information that will show how, if there's been a decrease in the number of people that were jailed as a result of the conscientious effort that was made by the department to give cite and release versus jailing, automatically jailing? Have you seen that?
I don't, but there has, if you look at the stats, I think there is a decrease or increase where we cite and release more. Also, COVID has a lot to do with that also over the last couple of months, but I do not have any data on hand as far as showing what the stats showed from last year to this year.
I do know from some data that we collected, sort of looked at, and I believe Tattionia is Miles is the one that helped collect that, and Dawn, so they may could follow up, but it seems like there was at least a drop of about 100 people difference using the cite and release policy versus, you know, before the chief edited the policy. So from the information that we have collected, that is a great, huge improvement, and we appreciate that. So if you take,
yes, ma'am.
Oh, thank you, sir. Thank you for coming also. If you take a look at the table that you see before you, you can, it sort of reiterates what Attorney Miles was saying, in that the PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder in children with incarcerated fathers, is 72%. And the anxiety, 51%. High cholesterol, so this is a physical and mental, it impacts them both ways. So high cholesterol, 31% of those children. Asthma, 30%. Migraines, 26%. So those are some of the physical results of that the children are going through as a result of having an incarcerated parent. And oftentimes these are things that we associate with health issues, but we don't associate them with having an incarcerated parent. So one of the things that we were working with the Wilson County schools with, that we want to work with National EdgeCom on, is that when you're looking at students in classroom and you see some of these issues, what's the issue behind the issue? What is the root cause of that issue? Not just, oh, the kid is having migraines. What is the cause? This could be it. This could be it. So I just want to point that out. Thank you. I want to thank you for coming today. If you have questions at this point, feel free to let us know by either raising your hand. If you had a question you wanted to ask someone that was on the screen today that spoke with you, we had several great presenters today. And we thank all of you for coming and taking your time and being a part. The contact information you see on the screen is for Dawn Blagrove, for myself, for NAACP, and Attorney Miles for Kate. If you have any questions that we don't get to today, please feel free to contact us using the information that you see on the screen. But if anyone has a pressing question, we'd like to take your question at this point. I see, let's see. What are the top 10 reasons that restored citizens recidivate and have poor health outcomes? Okay, so we have Victor Hennett, we have Kristie is still here, Dawn is still here, I think Tattionia is still here. Can anyone answer that? Restored citizens, what are some of the reasons that they recidivate?
I'll take it. Some of the reasons that we see for recidivism, first of all, recidivism is, again, I think it boils back down to poverty. Some of the reasons that we see for people who recidivate are, number one, is because they do not have solid resources, wraparound resources that they need to fully reacclimate into society in a way that is productive. That means that they need to have access to being able to get gainful employment, being able to get housing, and some of the more detrimental collateral impacts of being justice involved is that access to housing, access to jobs, access to economic stability and housing stability are severely limited because you've made this mistake, or because you've just been justice involved, not even necessarily made a mistake. But the system really isn't designed for these folks to flourish. So when we see people who do thrive after being justice involved, the real question we should be asking is, how did they do it? And most often the answer to that is because they had some type of strong support system, some type of strong family system, folks that came back to them and created opportunities for them. But society in and of itself does not really create an environment where folks who are re-entering after having been behind the wall, or even after have folks who have never been inside of a prison or jail, but are long-term justice involved because of probation, because of electronic monitoring, things like that. The collateral consequences that society sets up for them to fail are almost insurmountable. So anytime that we see folks who actually do succeed and do well, what we should be asking is, how did they do that? Because we need to be building societies and building communities that wrap around these folks and that lift them up. Because one of the things that we all need to understand is this: all communities are better when everyone has the basic human necessities, right? Food, clothing, shelter, and an income. That's what our returning citizens need to avoid recidivism. And our systems, we simply do not have the systems in place to support returning citizens and to support justice involved people the way that we should. And then we blame them for failing at a system at a game where all the rules are rigged against them. So if we want to see less recidivism, we've got to take reentry seriously. And we as a community, and that means a North Carolina community, have got to demand that our legislators invest in reentry in a way that is real and invest in people and not systems, so that the people who are returning have all of the tools that they need and do not have any of the hindrances that would stop them from being successful.
Can I add a little bit to that? Okay, so one of the phenomenons I'm running into, because I deal directly with those folks in prison and out of prison, is that the post-traumatic stress cannot be stressed too much. Even there is a phenomenon, I believe, that individuals who are successfully reintegrated in the community, get a good gainful job, get back home, is when it's the paranoia of losing after success. Some of them even self-sabotage. The other things is there are other underlying mental illnesses that may have caused them to be in the system at all and has not been addressed. Over 80% of individuals who are released from prison have a substance abuse problem. And these issues will crop up. The average statistics for North Carolina is right now within the next, well, nationally, most people will more likely recidivate within the first 3 years of their release. And one of the other reasons I think that we don't really think about is the community's responsibility to them to keep them out of prison. Mentorships, advocacy, we're trying our best to catch up to that, but sometimes we need more advocacy. So there is a strong initiative throughout the state for peer support, train, educated peer support counselors, and we're working hard on it. There's a lot of them out there, but we still need more. For example, right now, over 400 people in Mecklenburg County are certified peer support specialists, and that's in a population of over 1 million citizens. And so that 400 advocacy, you can see there is a need to increase the amount of peer support counseling there. And this is going to be an ongoing issue. Being formally incarcerated stays with you for the rest of your life. And the fear of it, the trauma of it, and all these things. But the community has not realized the need to constantly provide ongoing, consistent, sustainable services that our folks can tap into. A lot of them feel like they get a lot of support when they get released, but when something happens 2 years later, they're embarrassed to get help, and sometimes fall back in their old habits because they feel as though, you know, they've used all their resources in the beginning, and nobody else is going to help them after all the help and support we've been giving them. So I believe that we have to make sure that our system to reduce recidivism is as funded and as consistent as the police and the judicial system is. So we need to talk about sustainable counseling, sustainable issues. Of course, a lot of them have issues that branch out from that, but for the most part, when you're formally incarcerated, you might be more than willing to talk about depression or substance abuse, but you really don't want people to know that you were in prison. And we have to make that a little bit less taboo so that they can seek out help before they're reincarcerated. Thank you.
I want to thank everyone again for coming, and thank you so much to those of you who responded to the question. We had several other questions, but due to time, I'm going to ask that you take a look at the people who are here tonight. Mr. Hennett, his information. Mr. Hennett, can you put some have you already put some information in the chat that people can contact you?
Not yet, but I will.
If you would do that, because there were several other questions around a topic I think that you could answer for them.
Okay.
If you will look at our list of presenters, if you had a question, because of time, we won't hold you any longer. We will be having other forums. So this is not our last one. So look forward to it. We will continue with the same topic, the impact of incarceration. So when you see the flyer, just know that it is around the same topic, but it will focus on something different. So this time we looked at the data around children. We looked at the data around the economic impact. The next time we will be looking at another angle. It may be bail reform or something else. But I do want to thank each and every one of you for coming tonight, and have a great evening. Thank you.